Good morning. You're now listening to Kingston Community Radio, airing on FM 92.5 and AM 920 WGHQ, Kingston, New York. This programming is brought to you by our listeners and corporate underwriters who are interested in presenting local community radio. The opinions expressed on this program do not represent those of Pamel Broadcasting or Kingston Community Radio. Listeners are encouraged to send in $10 per month to help bring this program to you and mail your contributions to Kingston Community Radio, Post Office Box 4364, Kingston, New York, 12402. For more information or to donate online, visit our website at mykcr.org. Good morning, and this is Dan Gaddis, and thank you for tuning in, sharing the morning with us, sharing the season with us. Monday, December 27th today, 28 degrees, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey everybody, Rachel Ray here. Nothing brings a bigger smile to my face than cooking up a big meal for the whole family and lots of friends. But there's not enough room at my table for the 17 million kids in our country who struggle with hunger. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks collects surplus food to give hope to hungry kids. But they can't do it without your help. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Introducing the YMCA. Sure, you know the Y for a swim or a game of hoops, but we're more than that. We're a cause. When you take a jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Practice yoga as a team practices her leadership skills. We give people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds a chance to learn, grow, and thrive. So while you might think of the Y as the place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. That's the Y. We're so much more. Visit ymca.net/more.
Hi, this is Anne Marie from the great town of Kingston, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
And you're listening to KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM. A little bit about the weather for the next 3 days. Cloudy with snow showers developing for the afternoon. About a 40% chance of snow in the afternoon, and a light wintry mix early tonight. Precipitation will change to mostly light freezing rain overnight, a low of 28, and a mix of clouds and sun early on Tuesday, and a high of 47, and cloudy with a little rain and snow showers on Tuesday night, a low of 32. And let's get to the on-air studio with Dr. Ed Alio today. And good morning, Dr. Alio. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. How are you? Merry Christmas, belated. Happy New Year coming up. Did you see our sunrise today? Oh, you didn't see. You got here too early. It's coming up. Really nice today, Dan.
Oh, I saw a little hint, little pink fingers of clouds way off in the east, so I figured it was going to be pretty.
It was. What I saw was pretty, too. I didn't see much of it either, in all honesty. So, anyhow, Dan, I thought I would talk a little bit on hearing again, because I was asked to. And somebody asked me about a term called auditory deprivation. Auditory deprivation, it's probably self-explanatory in the sense that if you don't hear for a long time in one ear or both ears, you tend to lose some of your abilities to process information. What does that mean? Well, what it means is if you don't stimulate the cochlea, which is the hearing mechanism of the ear, routinely, you lose some of the sensitivity of processing information up what we call the central auditory pathways to the brain. To break it down, hearing loss is a degenerative disease and only gets worse with age. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? But it's true. If you don't, as you get older, we lose our hearing a little bit. It's usually in the high pitch areas we call high frequencies. And if you work in noise or you're exposed to loud noise over a long period of time, it gets exacerbated and that the hearing loss becomes more dramatic starting in the high pitch areas, which we call the high frequencies. So the degenerative process continues with age. So as we lose some of the high pitches or high frequencies, which are little hair cells within the cochlea, as we lose some of those hair cells, they become damaged, your hearing loss becomes more involved. And that's the degenerative process. And it also affects your cognitive ability to understand and process information. And that's where people start talking about the word dementia again. And it really is a situation where if people do not hear well over time, they tend to not process the information appropriately. And a while back, I was talking about those processes or those stages from the cochlea, which is the little snail-like device within your ear, and going out of the cochlea, which processes like a piano, if you will, the different frequencies. As it goes up through those stages, if you have a defective ear, if you will, or a cochlea, then what happens is people aren't able to follow what's happening. In the sense that I think the first stage is probably the one that makes most sense to people, and that's called the cochlear nucleus. And what happens there is it's a timing event where as we have a defective inner ear, the cochlea, and the sound leaves the inner ear, the cochlea, then it comes to this staging process where it's timing. So what the result is that people don't hear the first parts of words or the last parts of words. So they trail. They continue to look for or listen to the speaker, and I use the word chasing. They kind of chase the conversation in the sense that when you have a high-pitched hearing loss, it usually affects consonant sounds. Consonant sounds are clearness of speech. If you were to write a sentence on a board and you were to take out all the consonants and just leave the vowels in, you wouldn't be able to read the sentence. But if you were to do the reverse and take out all the vowels, then you'd be able to read the sentence.
Yes, in fact, some languages don't have vowels in them, like Hebrew. You spell all your words with context, and there aren't vowels.
There you go. So they should have more clearness, or less clearness if they have a hearing loss. So anyhow, what happens is that if you were to now take that same sentence and make the consonants less clear by, let's say, you make a J, instead of making the J have a curl at the bottom, you take the curl off and make the line. And then do the next word, J-U-M-P, and make the U okay, and then the M only make the tops of the M's, and the P make the P okay, you can still read the word. But if the more you blur the consonant, or the more high-pitched hearing loss you have, the less clearness you have in speech. So that's where the processing comes in. So if you can't see the consonants in written, printed speech, then it's hard to read it. If you can't hear those consonants, or the consonants are blurred, like a V and an F, then people make mistakes on what they hear. And I'm sure everybody knows somebody who has hearing loss, and they're talking to them, and the person's either staring out in space or not processing or saying yes to everything you're saying, which means they didn't understand it. And there's an indication of not hearing. Or they'll say what all the time. So, and people say, and I have to always put this in when I do this, Dan, that people always say, well, they hear what they want to hear. They have subjective hearing loss. I think all the years I've been doing this, that's probably the most disingenuous thing they say about individuals. The only people who do that are people who maybe have a mental problem, who don't understand or don't process. Nobody fakes a hearing loss. They may not own up to it, and they don't hear, and they hear what they want to hear is the word they use, or their family says they hear what they want to hear. And in essence, it's not true. They don't hear, but they hear some things better than other things. Back to the written word. If you blur out the consonants, some consonants appear to be, you can read better, depending on how you blur those out or write those down, and others are not as good. That's what happens, so they can read the word. But the next word they may not be able to read visually as you blur out the consonants, and that's what happens with the auditory process, or with consonant sounds. Some consonant sounds they hear better than others. Some words, in combination with vowels, they hear better than others. Vowels carry the power of speech. They carry the loudness of speech. So depending on how much oomph there is to the vowel, that helps people understand a little better. And the vowel, remember when you learn to read, there's blending of consonants to vowels. The better the blending of the vowel with the consonant, the better they understand. If there's less blending or less clearness of that consonant, or that consonant's a higher frequency consonant than other consonants, they don't understand. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. How the combinations of between like church,
Right.
The CH and then the U come together and form a sound, form an understanding. So, yeah, there's many combinations of consonants and vowels. So, I think I get it, Dr. Alio.
Well, I don't know if it's clear the way I'm saying it or not, but I think that's probably a better description of how it works, kind of a visual with a hearing description, and then looking at the processing ability. So if you have that hearing loss in the end organ, the cochlea, and you aren't able, and that damage is then sent up the chain to those different stages, you can see how now people can't localize sound. There's another stage where sound comes together. So your ear, you have to have both ears, by the way, to do this. And so if you have damage to the cochlea, you're not able to localize sound. So people who have a more significant hearing loss, even though both ears are the same, they can't tell where sound's coming from sometimes. So when a person is in one room and talks to an individual in the other room, two things happen. They don't cue them in, so the person doesn't know they're talking. All they hear is remember, they're trailing. They have to chase the conversation. So the person's talking to somebody like I'm talking to you, and then the person with the hearing loss says, "What?" Because they just all of a sudden heard them because they weren't concentrating. So you have to cue the person in. I have to say, like, "Hey, Dan," and you turn and look at me, and then we can talk. But if you're in a certain part of the house, and if let's say you have more loss in one ear than the other, and the person says, "Come over here," the individual with the hearing loss will then respond, "Where are you?" Because they go like, "Well, I'm down the hall." Well, I don't know that. I thought you were upstairs. And so, and I don't think those are significant points of view, and people never think about it with an individual with a hearing loss. So if you don't treat hearing loss, and the only way to treat it really when you have hearing loss, from a non-medical point of view, if it's a medical condition, then we treat it medically. But most hearing loss, 80% of hearing loss, 85% of hearing loss is non-medical, but it's progressive, it's degenerative. And hearing aids, sorry to say, are the only choice of treatment for most people, which is another topic altogether. Do they like hearing aids? Yes, no. But in all honesty, hearing aids are a lot smarter now and more proficient than most people who have hearing loss today realize, because they're looking at how it used to be, the non-digital, the analog hearing aids that were very limited in what they could do. Today, they're really smart. I mean, here right now, depending on how intense or how loud the sound is in different parts of it, if they're behind you and is 12 dB, 12 points louder, the hearing aid knows that the person's behind. If they're off to a side, it can tell. It also has directionality, if you will. That's a directionality thing. And if people have the directionality part of the hearing aid on, for example, wherever their nose is pointing out 45 degrees from their nose is what they hear best, and the background noise is somewhat reduced or muted, but it doesn't go away. And background noise is the biggest problem with individuals with hearing loss, and it used to be the biggest problem with hearing aids. Now, the hearing aids can tell where sound is coming from. It can tell whether it's your refrigerator making noise or your air conditioner, or if it's music versus refrigerator noise or air conditioner. It can tell if it's a group of people talking versus other noise, singing versus talking. So they're really pretty smart now. Not to mention that one hearing aid can understand like 32 different languages in short bursts. I don't know who needs that, unless you're a world traveler, maybe. But anyhow, those are just some of the ideas about hearing and hearing loss and in the cognitive processing. And the other thing that happens with high-pitched hearing loss, in most cases, there's a thing called tinnitus. Tinnitus is like a ringing, roaring, hissing, buzzing in your ear. And it's usually in the beginning that you hear the tinnitus. I mean, the tinnitus starts in the beginning of the hearing loss, and it usually starts with a high-frequency hearing loss. For people who work in noise, the ringing, roaring, and the starts out in the beginning, along with a fullness feeling in the ear. Well, if they introduce themselves, like if you ever go to a concert, or if you're around loud noise, and you come out of the noise, you'll hear, or you'll notice that there's like a fullness in your ear. It isn't bad. It's like a little fullness, and your ear may be ringing. Well, the fullness will go away, and the ringing will go away. That's called a temporary or transient hearing loss. It's just temporary. If you continue to put yourself into those noise conditions, whether it's heavy equipment, jackhammer, loud music, then the ringing will persist longer after the exposure. The fullness feeling goes away, generally, and the person starts to have a reduction in the high pitches or clearness. So what they notice is they'll have intermittent tinnitus in the beginning, and then they'll have a little difficulty understanding in background noise. Not significant, but a little bit. And they're going like, oh, what did she say? It's usually a she, because women have more high-frequency voices than men. And that's why they say, well, he hears what he wants to hear. He can hear him, but he can't hear the woman. Well, there's a difference in pitch, again. And they'll notice it on TV. They'll turn the TV up, make it louder for the family, and it's really loud, and they don't realize it until they walk away from the TV and walk back in the room. They go like, wow, that TV's loud, and I'm listening to it at that level. And the family notices it, but they do it, especially during newscasters. If it's a female newscaster, generally, they have more difficulty. If it's a male, they have less difficulty. Well, why is that? The same deal. Men's voices are lower pitch, just like yours, Dan, and mine versus a woman. I noticed it because I have a little high-frequency hearing loss myself. I noticed it yesterday during the football games. They're out in the field. I mean, they'll have a woman commentator who's really smart, really good. She's down on the sideline during the game and there's noise in the background coming through her microphone, you can hear her, but she's not as distinct as the guys who are down there talking for the same reason. And let me tell you why. When there's background noise, it's usually more low pitch or more widespread frequency over, more frequencies, like at a football game. There's a rumble and there's noise and there's yelling and screaming and all that. And then, so what happens is high-pitched hearing loss are covered up or masked best by low-pitch sounds, and high-pitched sounds don't mask low-pitch. So if everybody's screaming and yelling, you can hear the guy better because he has a lower-pitched voice than a woman who has a high-pitched voice. And so high pitches cover high pitches best, low pitches cover low, but low masks high better than highs mask low. Let's do that again. That makes you follow that a little bit, maybe?
But I think you meant highs don't mask low.
Nope.
Good. Okay, yes, repeat.
The same frequencies mask those frequencies best.
Right.
Lows mask lows, highs mask highs. But when you vary it, low pitches mask high pitches better than high masks low pitches.
So so highs don't mask low pitches as well.
Very good.
Okay.
Thanks for your help.
Following.
Dan. But
Okay. I'm trailing.
No, you're trailing. Yeah, but it's kind of interesting. So when you think about all the stuff you see on TV and all the people that wander around, it's really kind of I noticed it yesterday. I'm saying, like, I don't care about that. I want to watch the football game, and I'm listening to the woman and saying, I don't understand her as well. And so I brought that up. But that's what happens every day to people. They have difficulty in different listening situations. And so when people do get hearing aids, this is another good one, Dan. When a person gets a hearing aid, what they say often, what I say to people is, when I put a hearing aid on an individual, I tell them, I'll say, now, I'm going to turn the hearing aid on. I want you to listen to my voice. I don't want you to talk yet. Just listen to me. And the only thing I want to know, is the hearing aid too loud or is it too soft? Or is it okay? That's the only comment. I don't want you to judge how it sounds because my voice is going to sound okay. Now, when you start talking, your voice is going to sound different. It may sound raspy, it may sound tinny, it may sound it'll sound different. And that's because we have corrected the frequencies or the pitch ranges that you have problems with. So you're going to hear your voice differently and a more corrected, and you're going to think it's different. So we're not going to judge the hearing aid on your voice, we're going to judge it to everybody out there. And that always takes them back, because what they say over all the years, if you can believe this, well, of course you can believe it, is they'll say, it doesn't sound normal. And my comment is, well, to you, you don't have a normal, you don't know what normal is. I don't say it quite like that, but they really don't have a reference point for normal. Their reference point is a hearing loss. So they hear their voice different through their head and around from their mouth to their ear. So they hear it two ways, through bone and through air. Now we're going to correct it by air, okay? And it's going to sound different. So for women, it's going to sound more sharp. Their voice will be more sharp. For women, they may hear the lows better, but they'll hear it differently. And men are the ones who always say it doesn't sound normal, by the way. And I have to make sure that I tell them in the beginning, when we correct your hearing loss or adjust your hearing loss, you're going to hear your voice differently. Now, it may sound a little echoey, it may sound a little nasal, it may sound a little muffled, but that's okay. All we want to know, is it too loud or not loud enough? That's the only choice they get for the first week. You know how long it takes to adjust a hearing aid, Dan?
No, I've never known anybody to go through the entire process recently, anyway.
Well, what we do is we have a process. So anyhow, according to the literature, it takes 3 to 6 months for you to adjust neurologically to the hearing aid changes. So it's an adjustment. It's sort of like when you put your glasses on, you go like, oh, that's really good. That's great. With hearing aids, the same thing happens in the beginning. Well, I can hear a lot better, but it's also fatiguing. It's sort of if you got your adjustable glasses, where you have progressive, and people look down, or they'll look and they'll say, "Well, it makes me dizzy," or it's uncomfortable. So they say, "Well, you have to adjust to it." Well, what we do in that situation, we tell people it takes a month to wear the hearing aids full time. Biggest mistake people make, from my vantage point, is we put a hearing aid on somebody and we say, okay, and we give them different programs, which is another mistake. I only give them one program, a general program. And we say, okay, now you can wear it. And they walk outside, there's all kinds of sounds and noises, and it's fatiguing. Now, there's research in the past on noise in working environments, and in construction, for example. People who are in construction, or people who listen to loud music all day long while they're working, are more fatigued than those who don't, because it's an attack on your system, and it's fatiguing to separate noise from speech, noise from work, noise from reading, and that's all. So it's a process. You continue to go, and it's fatiguing. So even people who work out at the gym, they listen to loud music, they get all pumped up. What it does is it unknowingly, in some instances, it's fatiguing. They think it's pumping them up, but it's also fatiguing. So there's so it takes 3 to 6 months. So we start out with, you get to wear the hearing aid 2 hours a day for the first couple days, and you wear it after dinner, not in the morning when you get up. You don't go outside with it. So for the first week, you only wear it at home. Oh, that sounds terrible. Well, it's really pretty good, because now when they come back in 1 week, they're only wearing it, let's say, 4 hours a day. They start at 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, a couple days. Then they wear it from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Let's say they go to bed at 10, 6 to 10. And then after that, it's only 4 hours. They come back the next week. You say, okay, now the following week, and you give them a whole chart. You're going to start at 5 o'clock to 10, 4 o'clock to 10. So it gets you back into the day as opposed to jumping into the day. And that's why they reject hearing aids. And people will say things like, it makes me nervous, it gives me a headache, and it makes me dizzy. Years ago, I used to think, that's craziness. A hearing aid can't make you dizzy. It can't make you dizzy, and it can't make you get a headache, but that's what stress does.
It's
loud
the stress.
noise.
It's the stress.
Yeah.
So it's still a synergy neurologically and physically. It's still a major synergy for you to acclimate to your hearing aid, your new hearing aid.
Right. So it's and people don't think about that. And I think some of the practitioners and some of the salesmen who sell hearing aids to people, they don't think about the physiological aspects of new hearing or hearing loss over time and how it affects an individual. So the going slow is the best thing. And by the way, 3 to 6 months, I said, it takes to get used to it neurologically. What happens during that time is your clearness scores get better and better and better. It's like a training program, if you will. Those consonant sounds, they get clearer and clearer. Do they get to 100%? No. They probably don't get to 100%. And you're still going to trail off a little bit. But let's say that your understanding, we can do an understanding test, a clearness test, and let's say your understanding test is 60%. That's not good. You missed 40% of what's said to you. But we get you to 92%. That's pretty good. And that's really an awakening. That's like the glasses, put them out. That's really clear. But I can't quite see that. But you can see everything else. So that's good. What happens is if you don't tell people that, they're going to come back to you in a month or 2 weeks and say, well, let's say even 6 months. They say, well, I'm missing things. So you test them again, and you show them you're at 92%. But you're still missing 8%. You're focusing on the 8% you missed. You forgot that you missed 40%. Interesting?
That's very interesting, yes.
And most people, and I'm sorry to say this, but most practitioners don't tell patients that. Okay, so let's take a break, and I'll be right back.
Okay, and thank you, Dr. Ed Alio, an audiologist here in Kingston, and thank you for hosting today. And you are listening to KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM, 28 degrees on this Monday, December 27th. And we'll be right back after these messages.
When is the best time to talk to your family about staying in touch during a disaster? Amid the chaos? Or is the best time perhaps today? Go to ready.gov/communicate and make your emergency plan today. Don't wait. Communicate. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you a renter or homeowner having trouble paying past due electric and gas bills? The Regular Arrears Supplement Program may help. If you're eligible for the program, you could receive up to $10,000 in aid. If you're behind in rent payments, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program may also help. Get the relief you need to help pay off those bills. Visit the Assistance Program section of centralhudson.com for eligibility and application requirements.
Hi, this is Cameron Rylance from Kingston, and I support Kingston Community Radio because it's informative.
And you're with us here at KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM, WGHQ, and we're live streaming on mykcr.org. This upcoming portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Central Hudson. Monday, December 27th right now. It's 28 degrees. And let's get back to Dr. Ed Alio. And we do have a caller online with a couple questions.
Sure. Hi, this is Dr. Alio. This is Dr. Alio. I have a caller here. Go ahead, caller.
Hi. You helped me out back in the 90s when I had vertigo and when I looked up from my left side. Anyway, you tested me and you gave me an exercise to do, and it was wonderful. Like, I was fine after like 3 days. Well, now I've got vertigo again, and I've had a CAT scan of the brain, because the first thing you think of is the brain. And they said that it's that ear again, the inner ear or whatever, the crystals. And so they recommended I go to a physical therapist. And I did, but I only went one time because the exercise he gave me, made me so much worse. I just can't do them. And they weren't like what you gave me back in the 90s. I'm wondering, do you still have an office? Do you still practice? Do you still deal with vertigo?
No, I don't practice in Kingston. I still have offices, but I sold my Kingston, my practice here. But that's a good conversation about the vertigo.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here with Dr. John Yoya. He's a orthopedic surgeon, retired, and he whispered, he said, meclizine. Well, when you're dizzy, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about this before I answer your question. And you know, when you're dizzy, and everybody has a CT scan or a brain scan, and 99%, 98% of the time, there's no acoustic neuroma, there's no problem. And it's usually a benign situation like yours. So the meclizine is it sort of sedates your brain, makes you tired, and it doesn't do anything for the vertigo except put you asleep. And if it's acute, that works out pretty well. So that's a good drug to use. But for you, the exercises, I don't know what the exercises they gave you were, but there is a program called EPLEY, E-P-L-E-Y, EPLEY maneuver. And if you go online, and a matter of fact, if you call back in here or I'll give you my phone number. How's that? You can text me, and I'll send you the maneuver, which is a CD by a physical therapist, by the way, and it's the best video I've ever seen on the Epley maneuver. So this is how it works. What we did with you, and I'm not sure exactly what we did at the time, that's a long time ago, you know, is that you put people in positions and that makes them dizzy. Like if you put your head to the right, it's called a Dix Hall Pike, and lay them back, they get dizzy. You set them up, and then you let them relax a little bit, and you put them back down about 30 seconds later, they get less dizzy, and you keep doing this. This is called central compensation. And you'll fatigue the dizziness. So over time, dizziness gets better. But when you're dizzy, it's very frustrating. So the Epley is a maneuver, just like we talked about just a second ago, and you have to do it. The secret is, and at the end of this video, the woman says, which is a key point, that when you do the maneuver, those little crystals you talked about,
yes.
As they reset back down, they're called otoliths. As they reset back down into the semicircular canals, they get anchored and you stop getting dizzy. When they get loose and they float around in the semicircular canal, usually the horizontal or the posterior canal, that's when you become vertiginous, dizzy. So this maneuver will help set them, but the secret is not to move quickly afterwards or put yourself in the position that made you dizzy immediately after, and you got to do the procedure like working out. You got to do it more than once, and you got to do it a couple days, and then you should probably do it once a week after that, and continue to do it. Episodic vertigo is it's episodic, means it comes back. It'll happen again if you don't take care, and it happens under stress.
Explain the crystals.
Okay. Well, Dr. Yoyas explained the crystals. The otoliths, the crystals, are sort of on the bottom of the semicircular canal, and they allow you to move your head. And as long as they're anchored, if you will, the best definition, the best way to see it is, you know, that ball they have at Christmas time. You turn it upside down, and the snowflakes come out. And you turn it back, and they come back. That's how I explain the crystals a little bit. So as they anchor, go back down, then you become more stable. But at the same time, when you have a weak system, yours is a vestibular system. When you have a weak vestibular system, and you do something to stimulate that dizziness, and there's three ways you stay upright. One is your eyes, your ear, and the back of your brain, which is your cerebellar. So if you have a weak vestibular system, and that's what you have, and if you drink too much, that affects your ear, it affects your brain, and you become more vertiginous. If you turn quickly or close your eyes, or you're on a boat, the boat allows you to lose your proprioceptive. That's your cerebellar. That's your body in space. And you have a weak ear, you become more dizzy. So that's how people become car sick under those conditions. You're different. Yours is episodic. Yours happens quickly. Yours is vertigo. So the Epley is the best thing. Does that help you?
Well, the exercise, what he did give me, seemed very much like that. And that ended up affecting me. I became it affected my body in ways that the vertigo never did. My eyes felt funny, and they got extremely light sensitive, and brain fog like crazy, and just one thing after another on the rest of my body, and I couldn't do those exercises anymore. But the physical therapist said, well, it could be, that crystal thing in the ear, or it could be your neck. And I did not pursue like getting a scan of my neck, but I'm just thinking, it happens particularly when I do put drops in my eyes, and when you put your head back, depending on how far back you put it, that's when the vertigo is, just when I look up and put back. It doesn't affect me walking around or anything like that.
Well, okay. Yeah, I understand a little bit. So that's what vertigo is. I mean, if people turn right or left, put their head up, look down, bend over, roll over, that's what ticks it.
Yeah.
It makes it happen. What happened to you is he put you in the position that made you vertiginous. And that's what's going to happen with the epley. And that's how you know you have the correct ear. It's usually one ear over the other. It's a hypoactive vestibular system. One system's not as good as the other. And that's what makes you dizzy. And it's I'm not sure. And the brain fog is something that happens because, again, when you're really dizzy, first of all, you can't close your eyes. You shouldn't close your eyes, and that's probably what you did, and that made it worse.
That could be, yes.
Yeah. So when you become vertiginous, you want to keep your eyes open and look at your thumb, if you will. Stare right at it, and that'll help slow it down. The thing about your eyes, that's nystagmus. Your eyes are going zip, zip, back and forth rapidly, and that's also a sign of your vertigo. And the way it's going tells us which ear it is, another topic. So you have to do the maneuver, and when you get dizzy, that tells you got the correct ear, first of all. And it will subside if first of all, you got to relax. The more uptight you get, the longer it takes. But you got to try it. If that doesn't work, then you should see a neurologist, because maybe there's something else going on. And he says it's your neck. It could be your neck. That's called cervical vertigo. That's a different topic, a different situation than your ear. They're all involved, but I don't know. So I would say try the epley.
Yeah, have her call you so that she can get
number.
the CD.
Yeah,
and
I'll get you
we
the
got to move on now.
Yeah. Okay, my number is 845-430-9080, and I will email you the epley. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
So I got carried away there. Sorry, Dan. Thanks for jumping in.
That was equal to a good medical examination.
Thank you. Anyhow, we have Dr. John Yoya here. He's a friend of mine for years. Dr. Yoya is a retired orthopedic surgeon, an outstanding surgeon. But Dr. Yoya, besides being a good surgeon and an outstanding physician on staff for years with us, he's also a dog lover. Dr. Yoya evaluates dogs in the arena, if you will. He goes to dog shows. He's a judge, and he does well. But today we're going to talk about dogs that help people.
Did you want to talk about my hearing loss at all?
Yeah, I guess. Well, we were talking about hearing loss, Dr. Yoya, and I was saying that some people have hearing loss, and you don't wear hearing aids, and you said to me... Not yet. And, well, what are your symptoms?
Well, it's very interesting that for years, when I entered a room where there was a lot of people, outside I had no problems, or at home, but suddenly when there were people around, everything would sound like a buzz. It wasn't true tinnitus, but I really wouldn't hear well. And I didn't realize how much I counted on people's lips to know what was going on. And then I became an old man. I'm 73, and it really became apparent, and I blame it on, as a joke, Fender amplifiers, because starting in the 60s, I played a lot of guitar. I played with several bands, including one in the Hudson Valley, and we played loud. And in fact, that was the reason why I essentially quit the band, because the joke in This Is Spinal Tap is that my amp goes to 10. Well, my amp's Fenders go to 11. And we would start out low, and since I was the lead guitar player, they expected me to cut through the mix. And so one night, our drummer, who I didn't realize was actually deaf, he looked at me and he says, "John, it's the first time I could really hear you, except that Wayne, the drummer, he's deaf in his left ear now, and George, who was on my right side, he's deaf in his right ear." So, I mean, we played loud, all right, and I think that had a lot to do with it.
Dan, does this sound familiar from our conversation about how you get a hearing loss?
By all means.
Yeah,
and
loud.
musicians have great, the Ear Institute, for instance, that was, I think, one of them was founded by Pete Townsend, all because of so many incidences of especially rock musicians and concert musicians with hearing loss. Huge.
And yet they say
it
that
is huge.
Pete apparently does not have hearing loss himself. I mean, he founded this, and yet, if you follow along, he actually has pretty good hearing, which amazes
good for him.
me.
That's true. That is the loudest band in the world.
I would be amazed by that. I'm a non-believer in that one, by the way.
Yeah,
he's one of the guys we call that denial.
Unless he had enormously well-designed hearing protection throughout the whole time, which wasn't. It did not exist in the 60s.
For those younger people, if you can remember when they started playing in the 60s, I hated them. And only because people expected us to destroy our equipment. And if you're a kid in Brooklyn and you have one electric guitar, you're not going to take it and smash it on the ground or take the head of that guitar and put it through your amplifier that your parents paid a lot of money for.
No, you aren't.
Or that you worked 2 jobs to pay for. So, I mean, people have no idea how loud they were. Or bands like the Vanilla Fudge. I mean, if you could remember, I took the gal who's presently my wife, who was my girlfriend, and how she could actually still stay with me because she thought she was going to a Richie Havens concert, and he opened for the Fudge, and we were in the front row. I mean, you thought it was a near-death experience because your chest was being compressed against the chair.
Oh, yeah.
So just think about all that. All that intensity, loudness. When I was at Ohio State, I went and measured bands and music, and the noise level reaches 130 dB. A jet plane is 140.
Right.
Wow. And I had a kid one time over at Northern Dutchess who went to a concert in Poughkeepsie. He stood by this speaker that was as tall as him. He came out. He had permanent deafness. Mm-hmm. One time. Yep. He was permanently had a hearing loss, not deaf, hearing loss. Mm-hmm. So nobody's ever deaf.
He was actually right next to that.
Right next to it.
And proximity has a lot to do with it because you've got, in distance you lose, if you double the distance you lose half the volume. So you have that to consider too, where you measured, for instance, 130 dB.
Yeah. Well, I didn't measure it right on top of the speaker. I measured it in the room.
Right,
but,
in the room
so
where people are.
It's pretty intense, and that's how you get hearing loss. So, again, your symptom of the blurriness, or whatever you said the word was, is really the clearness problem again. And it's also background noise versus speech. You're unable, if you have a hearing loss, you're unable to separate speech from background noise.
Right.
Again, it's for the different frequencies we talked about that affect or mask clearness. So speech has lots of consonants, noise has both high frequency and low frequency, and it tends to mask those consonant sounds, meaning usually you have a high frequency hearing loss. So you lose clearness, women are harder to understand, children are harder, foreign language, people with accents are harder to understand. Does that sound like you at all?
True. And your wife yells at you.
Yes. And he's smiling about it. Remember I told you they do that all the time? It's always a joke about their hearing loss. That's part of the denial. No offense, John. But nobody wants the damn hearing aid, but they're really good.
When your priest tells you, because at Mass a couple of weeks ago, I said, Father, you really need to turn up your volume. And he goes, and he points to his ears, and he goes, you need these. Okay. So
there you go.
I've taken it very seriously.
From God down.
God on down. I mean, it is a serious problem. And the issue is a lot of it is vanity. It's accepting, it's hard to accept things as a male. It's tough. I remember walking away from concerts, I'm sure you have, where your ears were ringing. and was.
High school band. I remember sitting in the bathroom, quiet. My ears were ringing. I mean, for, maybe a half hour or something like that. Later, it was gone.
Yes.
But, that's cumulative.
That's precisely.
That is cumulative, though.
So the bottom line is I always used to say, and when I was here in Kingston practicing, and we still have offices, I have offices in Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island, but the biggest problem is, of all the things to have in your practice, who would want a hearing aid as something to give to somebody? Nobody wants the damn thing, sorry. And they think it's too expensive. They don't appreciate it because they think of it as an old wire, or they know somebody who doesn't like it. And it's really got a bad rap because people don't get the rehab program that we talked about.
But we wear glasses.
I know.
We wear glasses, and we're not embarrassed. I guess when we're little children, we don't want to wear them, but it's no different. It's an assistive device.
Well, if you look at the people out there today, they got all kinds of things hanging from their ears, young people.
True.
And they don't have the same problem that we have about it, or people about hearing aids. My partner in our practice, he refuses to wear his hearing aids unless they're teeny tiny things, and his ear is small, so they don't work, and he gets wax in them all the time, which is a big problem with hearing aids if you don't have the right fit. And so he's a problem guy. He's the typical. He's always complaining about his hearing aids. He won't wear the ones he should wear. So you need hearing aids, John.
So now, when you do your exam, do you also look for wax and stuff?
Of course.
Okay.
We look in
actually
your ear.
do a physical
We clean
exam.
it out. Yeah, of course, John. We also look in your mouth and up your nose.
Really?
Yeah. You should know there's a thing called referred otology. If somebody has a sore throat, the ENT physician looks in the throat, but he also looks in your ear, because there's a nerve that goes from your throat, the back of your tongue, to your ear canal in your ear. And so it could be that you have a lesion, a scratch or whatever, in your ear, and your throat bothers you. So there's a referred situation. I'm sure you have it in your practice. Don't you have people who say my toe itches and they don't have a toe from diabetes?
Correct.
Yeah.
So slow.
Yeah. There's a ghost pain. Well, the same thing happens with your. So we do it all. We look at all those places, and you remove the wax. Wax is, for people who think they have a hearing loss, they're always hoping it's wax.
Yes, true.
And at age 73, it's not wax. It could be a little wax, but it's not wax. My son wears hearing aids, and he's 50, and he had good hearing until he started shooting guns. Now he wears 2 hearing aids, and his hearing loss, he says he can't function without his hearing aids. He uses his hearing aids on the phone. When the phone rings, he hears it in his ear. He answers it that way, so it works really well for him. He can talk. You talk to the phone, but you hear through your hearing aids. And so he does really well. His hearing loss, compared to my partner in our practice, is much better hearing loss than my partner's. And my partner was resisting hearing aids and still doesn't pay attention like he should with his hearing aids.
Really, and I say,
my son's like my father. No matter what hearing aid I gave him in the old days, my son Eddie said, "It's okay, I can wear this." He's one of the few people. My mother, she wouldn't wear them. See, it is a vanity thing. It's an adjustment
feel better
thing.
if I could hide it.
You can hide them. I'll tell you what, there's 2 things. First of all, you can't see it. Even with your hair the way it is, you won't see it, number 1. Number 2, your hearing loss is more noticeable than the hearing aids. Did you get that one?
Okay. I heard all of it.
Yeah. Well,
oh, yes, they're unnoticeable. Yeah. Unnoticeable these days. The really high-tech ones, the ones you're talking about that, are they Bluetooth? Is that the way it's working?
It's also Bluetooth, yeah.
Also, yes. And
some of us older people, they'll remember our grandmothers, and hang on a second, and it would be whistling. You must remember that. You'd hear.
Of course. That's what people say. I hear that thing whistle. It's called feedback. It whistles. Well, and again, the new technology, it's called a thumbprint. So soon as the hearing aid hears that feedback, that whistle, it stops it. And it usually happens in certain conditions, like if you pull your hat down, and it has a fingerprint. So when you pull your hat down, it goes beep, and it stops. The person says, my hearing aid beeps every now and then. That's the hearing aid getting rid of or stopping the feedback. You know?
It's interesting. Like my Bose, I bought very fancy Bose.
Of course.
For the airplanes, because you fly to the happiest place on earth, Orlando, and there's 100 kids screaming, and for 2.5 hours, and they really work well.
Well, that's noise cancellation. Correct. And that's pretty good. And the way that works is when the microphone hears the noise. Let's say the noise is amplitude like this, and it's a certain pitch. Okay, so and what it does is it brings it when it comes like this, it cancels it by doing the opposite, so it becomes a null. So it makes it go away.
Literally makes the energy go away.
Yeah.
It's called phase.
Hearing aids do that too.
Phase cancellation. But your explanation was much
so I will
more
get
clear.
checked out.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been talking about these things. It's kind of fun. You're going to what?
I will get checked out.
Good, John. I'm excited for you now. You were perfect. You came in the end of our conversation, and he reinforced, didn't he? All the things we were talking about: denial, hearing loss, kidding about it, saying everybody mumbles, all those things.
Correct.
You're
correct.
You should be a poster child for this, for hearing aids.
Poster child for anything.
Okay, let's talk about. Okay, so you and I were talking the other day about dogs and how we use dogs in medicine, how we use dogs in training, how we use dogs in the airport, how we use dogs in the military. What's that all about, John?
Okay, so give people some background. So I started in American Kennel Club activities about 50 years ago when we got our first dog. And I'm usually associated with small dogs, toy dogs. I had Shih Tzu, I had Lhasas, and now I have Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, floppy-eared dogs, and everybody loves them. But as you work with the AKC, you see other issues. And dogs have a tremendous relationship to man. I mean, from the Stone Age or whenever the wolf decided that he could get a better meal by hanging around the campfire than going out and killing things. So this relationship over the last couple of decades has really blossomed so that we're using dogs for a lot of things. And the overall term might be detection dogs. But the question is, what are they detecting? What are they doing? Now, first of all, my personal, I train dogs for therapy work. So my little guys go to nursing homes, senior residences, hospitals, even the office.
So, what do they do?
Well, they mind comfort people. Okay, but they also bring people out of, well, for instance, we would go weekly to the Hudson Valley senior residence before they closed. And I really started doing it when my mom was there. But what I found out was that in bringing Jack, which was one of my main dogs there, and you dress him up and people, can I pet the dog? It brought people out of their shells. So there was one gal who always sat in the corner and she never talked to anybody. And suddenly she wanted to pet the dog and hold the dog. And she started telling me about her dogs. And we realized she was a career military officer, never spoke to anybody, had no use for anybody. And suddenly she came at it. So weekly, she was very talkative. And then the only gentleman in the senior residence at the time was a black gentleman. I won't use his name. And all he would do is walk. He'd walk around the facility, walk outside the facility, kept to himself. And suddenly he comes over and he says, can I pet the dog? I said, of course, that's why he's here. Hug the dog. And suddenly I found that he was another military man. He was a paratrooper in the Arctic Circle. He was in Fairbanks. He had not Malamute, Siberian Huskies his whole life. And now he was deprived of his dogs. And suddenly this gentleman came out of his shell, became a real talkative person. So they're comforting and they're a bridge to humanity. And so my little Jack actually had a story written about him for the American Kennel Club because he's a therapy dog, excellent. He had 250 visits. We'd bring him to the office when we had kids, like Cast Clinic. So he'd be around and, the dog is that bridge. And it's not like the scary guy in the white coat with the cast saw that's going to hurt
that'd be
the
you?
child. Me.
Yeah.
Me. And so Now, therapy dogs are also used, in the hospital, sick people. There's a great commercial for one of the cancer centers about changing, and it's a little child about to go through treatment again, and instead the big dog comes in, and she's all smiles. And so cancer centers, senior residences, but then there's also, they're used for reading. Children who are ashamed to read or fearful, you put them in a situation at a library where they read to the dog. Dogs are trusting. They don't put values
because
on.
Dogs aren't that smart?
No. Dogs are a lot smarter than we think. And
how do they range? Speaking of intelligence, by breed. I heard they were like those cattle dogs are really smart, and your dog's not so smart.
I don't want to get. No, you'll get called. I'll be attacked.
That's okay. You can talk about the smart dog. What you have to hold up on that, John, because we have a break coming up. You got saved by the break. Here we go.
I see it.
Okay, and thank you for being with us here at KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM. It's 8 o'clock a.m. right now, Monday, December 27th, 28 degrees here in Uptown Kingston. This last portion of Kingston Community Radio has been brought to you by Central Hudson. We'll be right back after these messages.
Family about staying in touch during a disaster amid the chaos? When is the best time to talk to your family about staying in touch during a disaster amid the chaos? Or is the best time perhaps today? Go to ready.gov/communicate and make your emergency plan today. Don't wait. Communicate. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you a renter or homeowner having trouble paying past due electric and gas bills? The Regular Arrears Supplement Program may help. If you're eligible for the program, you could receive up to $10,000 in aid. If you're behind in rent payments, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program may also help. Get the relief you need to help pay off those bills. Visit the Assistance Programs section of centralhudson.com for eligibility and application requirements.
Hi, this is Diane Eastwick from Athens, New York, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
And we're back, and this upcoming portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Herzog's. Stop by Herzog's Home and Paint Center in the Kingston Plaza for all of your home building, maintenance, and painting needs, and discover the difference of buying local. And visit their website, herzogs.com, for ongoing sales. Cloudy with snow showers developing for the afternoon, a high of 32 today, and chance of snow is 40%. A light wintry mix early tonight with a low of 28, and mostly changing to light freezing rain overnight, and there's a 50% chance of that. And then on Tuesday, a mix of clouds and sun early, then becoming cloudy later in the day with a high of 47. And cloudy with rain and snow showers Tuesday night, got a 60% chance of that with a low of 32. And let's get back to the on-air studio with Dr. Ed Alio. Welcome back.
Thanks, Dan. Again, I have Dr. John Yoya here. He's a orthopedic surgeon, retired, and he's also a dog lover. We before the break we ended with we have a phone call. Okay, before the break we ended with a comment about how smart dogs are. We'll get back to that because we have a caller. Go ahead, caller.
Okay, and she was on during break and she hung up, but she had one simple question.
What's that?
It's another another listener that is asking about getting the Epley Maneuver CD, and she would be happy to hear your phone number again.
Okay, sure. My phone number is 845-430-9080. 845-430-9080. If you send me a text message with your email and your name, I will send you the Epling maneuver, and hopefully that helps you. Back to Dr. John Yoya. John, I was saying to you that I hear that some dogs are smarter than other dogs. Those dogs that run around and chase cattle and stuff are really smart, and the little dogs aren't so smart. Or maybe it's the big dogs that aren't so smart. How smart are our dogs, John?
I think they're all smart. I think there's different levels of how they manipulate us.
Oh, they manipulate.
So I think many of the, it depends upon where they sat in the cave and what they got used to. I've seen this joke about, if a wolf knew he was going to look like a pug someday, that he would bite the caveman. They're all smart. They each have their own talent. And so small dogs can be very, very intelligent. They manipulate you into getting what they want. On the other hand, there are dogs that have different skill sets, shall we say. The herding dogs, they've been bred over time to do what they do. And if you watch them, they actually manipulate the sheep or the cows with their eyes. It's really not so much that I don't know what they do, but if you watch the dogs, because there are herding trials and stuff, I don't do that. Most people I do the terriers, the toys, and the non-sporting dogs.
What are those?
Well, small. The dogs in the American Kennel Club started a century and a half ago with dogs that were sporting, that's obvious, the hunting dogs, and non-sporting, everything else. And then over time, as more breeds were accepted as being individuals, they made different groups. So there's sporting, there is hound, working, terrier, toys, non-sporting, and herding dogs. And so there's about 174 breeds separated into these groups. And it's, if you think about it, the sporting dogs are all the sporting dogs. They're the pointers and retrievers. And, so the Labrador retrievers, the golden retrievers, and then the hounds is very obvious. And even there, you have sight hounds, and and the ones that sort of go to ground. So if you look at the Afghan hound, these regal breeds, they're from the desert. They chased game, so they were the sight hounds. And then you had the ground dogs. Look at the smaller ones. You had the dachshunds and stuff that really chased game underground and fought things. Many of them, because of what we've done to them as pets, don't do what they did, or people would be, we don't do ratting anymore. I mean, all the terrier breeds started out, many of them started as ratters.
What's that mean, ratters?
Well, actually, they rid the granaries of rats. They killed them. And then there was a sport in England. They would have a pit, and they would fill it with rats, and they would throw a terrier dog in there, and the number of rats that he killed in a 5-minute period of time, he would be the champ. It's kind of gross if you think about it. But that's so. Every dog has a skill. Whether we use that skill or not is our decision. But if you look at it. Within the dogs that are working that we see, there are different sensing apparatuses on dogs. So you see the military, we talked about this for a while, think about two types of dog. Think about a flop-eared dog and think about a dog with perk ears. And or cropped ears. And there's a reason. I don't want to get into dock and crop and whether it's, but floppy-eared dogs are always sweet. You look at a Labrador, you look at a golden retriever, all you want to do is hug it. So if you're going to have a detection dog at an airport and you don't want to alert people, you have a floppy-eared dog. Everybody wants to pet it. It's a great dog. They're really sweet, whatever. If you want to put people, if you're dealing with terrorists, if you want to put, you get a dog with erect ears. So you use a German Shepherd, a Belgian Malinois. Okay, the most common dog being trained right now for the military is the Belgian Malinois.
I don't know what that is.
I will explain. Think about a German. If most people know German Shepherds, Rin Tin Tin, sort of looks like that, but it's the body is a little more streamlined. Same kind of face, pricked ears, there are 3 Belgian Shepherds. There's the Belgian Shepherd, which is black. There's the Belgian Tavern and the Belgian Malinois. They're kind of like different paint jobs. All very, very intelligent. And it's the one that you see most typically with the military being dropped from an aircraft, being held. Brilliant dogs. And they judge you. You meet up with them. The first time you meet a Malinois, you better make it your friend. You don't try to bully them because they will make a lasting image of you. There's a local friend.
Like an elephant?
I don't know much about elephants, but I do know that, for instance, a local friend, a restaurateur, got a Malinois. Beautiful dog, absolutely beautiful. He's wonderful to the family. But one of our friends thought when the dog was a puppy, he would just go bark at it and put it down. Dog hates him, will not allow him. And at the same meeting, I just went in and used the dog's name. I said, "Come over here, sweetie." He sat down on the floor, came over to me, and I'm fine with the dog. And it's just the way you approach them.
I had a black lab once that I got, and it was great with everybody except for a child under 9 years of age, 8 years of age, who was shorter.
Yes.
He was afraid of him.
Yes.
She would snap at him. She wouldn't bite anybody. I would never let any dog bite anybody. But anybody else, the only time she wasn't around children. So I figured at one point somebody must have fell on her, hurt her when she was little.
Could have been.
And she's just afraid of kids.
Many dogs can't
didn't like kids.
Many dogs can't make the association of a little person. They don't understand how this is a little person. And that was pushed on me by a breeder, oh my God, almost 50 years ago. And because we had little children and we had dogs, he says, "Oh, your dogs are good with kids." Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're not. It's just that they don't make the connection.
Well, our dogs also, since dogs are when they're in a group, what's that called? Puppies are in a
pack.
A pack, good.
Yeah, there's a pack mentality.
So when you have children, and this is one of the things I learned years ago, I don't know if it's true or not, that when you have children, you have a puppy and you have a baby, people think they can raise them together, and I think that's a great idea. The difference is if you get a bigger dog, when somebody has to be the alpha dog.
Exactly.
And sometimes the kids lose. And I'm sure you've seen this in the hospital because I've seen it, where a kid comes in, he's got a bite on his face from his dog that he's had around since he was a kid, since a puppy. Now the dog is bigger and the kid's only 3 years old, and it's out in the heat, and the kid steps on the dog, falls on the dog, and the dog bites him.
I'll give you a worst case scenario, and I always would joke about, and forgive me out there, the little old lady who has dogs. She's had dogs over time. Suddenly she's older and she gets a more aggressive dog, and he's wonderful with her. I don't want to blame any dog, but let's say it's a Doberman, okay, or a Rottweiler, and she treats it like a baby. It's a baby, and a lot of times it's fine, but suddenly she goes and reprimands the dog, and the dog doesn't understand, and the dog reacts to her because the dog, in a sense, maybe does not respect her as being alpha, and so you just have to be mindful that it's a creature, and you have to be consistent with whatever you do with it. And those of us who had more than one dog in a house, it doesn't have to be a male. We just lost a 15-year-old Cavalier. She was the alpha bitch of the house. She put everybody down. And all she had to do, and the same thing happens with cats. If you ever have cats in a house, we always had feral. We always have feral cats. Okay, so we brought in this little black cat. She's the smallest thing in the house. Other animals would walk around the living room to get away from her, just so she wouldn't look. Okay, we had a Yorkshire Terrier. He was adorable. Big dogs would avoid him if he had food in a dish, and he never bit anybody. He never growled at anybody. They would literally walk through a different room just not to
So
deal with
there is
Charlie.
this pack mentality
Absolutely.
does exist. And I think like the older woman that you talked about, she was cuddling the dog, so she's not the alpha.
Right.
And then she becomes an alpha. Now they have to decide,
Right.
like dogs do. And they don't always bite, but they growl or they'll fight or they'll do something. They'll fight with each other just to dominate again.
Correct.
The dog will put the tail between their leg and go away, and that's what people should do sometime, I guess.
Yeah.
And but I go to Keegan Ale. He's got two off-breed. What are the dogs? Pit bulls.
Mm-hmm.
That, and I'm not big on pit bulls, but these are the nicest dogs. And guess who trains who? I go there and I always have food. There could be 100 people out there, they'll come right to me. As soon as they see me or hear me, they come right over, and I feed them, and they're always there.
The association is.
So who trained who
that is
here?
good.
Yeah.
Well, I told you that dogs are very manipulative.
That's what I say.
And I want to.
I went there the other day, and they jumping all around, and I had to go out and get the food again because I got trained.
Always carry some treats in your pocket. That's something you learn. Yeah. Just giving a moment to pit bulls. The problem with pit bulls. Okay, let's take a different breed. If you remember back in the 70s, the Rottweiler was the devil dog. Suddenly you got a bad. Rottweilers can be wonderful dogs. They have a great personality. So get to the pit bulls again. Now, pit bulls really, okay. So in this country, you only have two real pit bull type dogs. You have the American Staffordshire Bull Terrier and the Staffy Terrier. They're different, but they would look like pit bulls to you. What we see on the street here are usually crossbreeds, and they're still good until they're mistreated. So what people assume pit bull are, and I'm going to say, the drug guy or the inner city guy who trains these dogs to be mean, the famous football player who is fighting dogs. That's not the nature of these dogs. The AMP staffs love children. I mean, they actually love children. If they associate,
what an AMP staff is. What's that?
Think about your pit bull, but bigger.
Okay.
They're about 65 pounds fully grown, but it looks like a pit bull. And the whole idea is that they are the nanny dogs. They and the bull terriers, they love children. You put a child with them, they will die before that child gets injured. And so, for me personally, when I'm being educated with them, to sit in a house with a whole bunch of AMP staffs, you're licking you and whatever, you immediately, they're great dogs. I mean, I have been in the ring, because I judge a lot of breeds, I have been bit by more Chihuahuas and English Toy Spaniels. Breeders of AMP staffs and staffies will not put up with bad temperament. They temperament test, and this may sound cruel to the people out there, but they'll put down a dog that they think has a bad temperament because it will be a danger. So they have.
Is that a big dog, by the way, or what?
An AMP staff is 65 pounds and could easily kill you. Okay, so the whole point is they temperament test their dogs. If they see something, they will put the dog down rather than risk.
Well, the SPCA doesn't do that. I mean, they think all dogs should be alive. I had a patient recently, last year. He rescued a pit bull 10 years ago, and it's a great pit bull. The dog died. He got another one, and this was just last year. And he brought this dog home. He had him for a couple of weeks. The dog got in, he rolled over in bed. The dog was there. I don't know why people put him in bed, but he got in bed with him, and the dog killed him, basically almost killed him.
Wow.
Bit his neck, face. He was in the hospital for 6 months and then died after that from a dog. But these dogs are abused. I know they're abused dogs.
Yeah.
And, you never know. But so you're right. Temperament is something, but we don't do that to put animals down.
Well,
and I don't.
If you ever watch the TV program, we're far off our subject here, but pit bulls and parolees, she does. She tries to save everything, but she will not put a dog out. The gallant and her family, they really do. They're very, very, very sensitive to this. And I think when you work with some of these rehoming places, now I don't know locally. I will not say anything bad about them. I contribute to them. I think they do a wonderful job overall. I don't know how they temperament test dogs. I just don't know. So I will not criticize at all. But I think if you're dealing with bigger, the potential, you know, you get bitten by a Chihuahua, it doesn't even break skin generally. Like you get bit by a pit bull, you're going to get hurt. So I think there's a difference there. And I joke all the time because a judge in the ring has to be very wary. We are if when you there are dogs that you do not approach from the side or over the top because it's a sign of aggression. So if I have a Chow or a Chinese Shar-Pei, I will always approach them from the front. Chow has very limited side vision. So if you come up along the side of a dog that doesn't know you, you're asking for a problem. This is a Chow is a former Chinese guard dog. So you really, the person approaching any dog should be very attentive to what they're doing. I once I run dog shows as a chairman. I had an all-breed judge go over the back of a Rottweiler in the ring and was bitten on the face. He had to disqualify the dog, which means the dog can no longer compete. But the first thing he said, good judge, was, I was so stupid. I mean, this is a guy I look up to, he just did something stupid and paid for it.
Yeah, I never touch a dog, and I always come from the front, and I put my hand down and let him sniff me.
Let him sniff you.
And I don't reach out.
And people ask the.
I think it's wrong to do that.
If anybody remembers, I love movies. The Pink Panther. Is that your dog? Okay, I thought your dog didn't bite. That's not my dog. I mean, the whole point is just ask before your child goes and pets a dog. All you have to say is your dog friendly? May I touch your dog? And I think that's the way you handle that.
Keep going.
Good morning.
Keep going, Josh.
We were talking about utilizing dogs, okay? And a couple of the things. Hopefully we'll have time to get to truffle dogs because I absolutely love the subject. But when we think about detection dogs, we think about one of the subjects I'm actually involved in is an AKC program for detection dogs for bombs.
What's that mean, detection? Tell us.
Everything changed with 9/11. And AKC first started a program, and they had Schutzhund training, which means gun dog training. They were so concerned about the public's behavior with these dogs attacking people that they dropped the program. What we need now, because of 9/11 and at the airports, are detection dogs who smell out bombs. We're not looking for drugs so much as looking for, okay? I got stopped. I was coming back from California. I actually had a dog with me at LA, and the dog was fine. I was brought to the side because my host had heirloom tomatoes, and they had nitrates as the fertilizer, and they had nitrates on me, and I was the one, and they swabbed me and everything. So AKC is involved in a program because there are so few detection dogs being bred here. Most of the dogs, particularly Malinois, are coming in from Europe at very high prices. So the military has spent literally millions of dollars in dog detection programs, and I'm involved in the periphery of that. But AKC is wonderful. But we use dogs for other epilepsy, diabetes. Dogs can be trained to do a lot of things. Cancer detection dogs.
How do they do that, John?
Well, let's start with the easiest. The easiest is actually the diabetes dogs. And I don't think I or you can do this because there's programs to do it. But the dog is given saliva of an individual with various levels of blood sugar. And you have to understand that a dog, particularly a pointy-nosed dog, okay, versus it's called brachiocephalic Shih Tzu, with the pretty head and all, different sensory organs. So that pointy-nosed dog, the Collie, the German Shepherd, the Malinois, 20 to 100 times, 100,000 times better smelling than us, the olfactory system. So they can tell the difference between a low blood sugar and a high blood sugar. And they can get to the point where if they're around their owner, they can tell if that person's about to go into crisis and warn them. So but the dog has to be trained. Similarly, the epilepsy dogs, whether it's the electrostatics of a person going into it, they actually can predict a seizure. They're trained. The Epilepsy Foundation has dogs doing, and they'll either warn the person so the person can sit down. We've all had, I hope we've all had friends or whatever who have epilepsy. I remember in high school, a buddy of mine would go out into the hallway, sit down if he knew he was about to have an aura, about to have a seizure. Larger dogs will actually come between the individual and the ground to protect them from falling. Similarly, as a therapy or working dog, service dog, there's a difference between therapy dogs like I have and service dogs. So at the National Dog Show, I was having breakfast. I had a gentleman with a huge mastiff, not a bull mastiff, huge mastiff. And I asked, he had cancer. He was very weak. Dog helped him get around. To get up, he was his walker. He got up with him, he helped him, got him around. So we use dogs in tremendous, and if you have a moment, we'll talk about the truffle dogs, which I love.
I know you want to talk about that.
Love.
Well, we have another guest here, John. Stick around. Just as Gene Jacobs is here.
I've known Gene for 100 years.
Okay, so everybody knows everybody.
100 years.
Okay, well, 100 years is a long time.
Well, I've been around a few, and Barbara.
Well, that's good. So we're talking about dogs right now. We're talking about medical stuff, and Gene's going to come in and help us, and maybe we can tag team here on some things. Gene, tell us a little bit about you and your background for our listeners, please.
Absolutely. I'm here today because I have been a professional in the healthcare industry since 1971. I started my career wanting to work out of the home with children at Kingston Hospital in 1971. At that time, Tony Triulzi was the CEO, Denny Pitcock was the controller, and Mike Palario was in the human resources.
So what did you do, Gene?
So I began working there in the office, in managing in the office, and I was there for almost 9 years. But I wanted to climb the ladder, and Dave Meshes introduced, of course, the family practice at that time on Sauk Hill Road. So I took an internal move, and I began working there with Dave Meshes. Neil Kalman, Dr. Kalman, who now is the CEO there. I was there for almost 17 years.
Doing what?
Okay, I again climbed the ladder. I went there as the manager, practice administrator, as we began, and then I began working. I went back to school to New York Medical College, and I was involved in the finances, the audit, the whole residency program, diagnostic and treatment center.
What residency program, though?
Okay.
I'm not clear.
Okay, family practice.
Oh, family practice.
Dr. Meshes started a residency program there in 1979. He wanted to create a program and for the indigent and near poor, because many of the family doctors were leaving or retiring in the city of Kingston. And he wanted to rebuild the family doctor so that they would stay in the area. So he built an empire, quite frankly. I started with him. And as I said,
I remember Dr. Meshes. He's a good guy. And he was home-based mostly in New Paltz, I believe.
Yes.
He started a little program there. And the family practice residency program has blossomed over the years. I've lectured there several times. He did a great job. He was good at that. Wasn't there another fellow, also another physician?
Dr. Berg.
Dr. Berg, right.
Norman Berg.
Dr. Norman Berg. They were like a tag team at the time, right?
Yes.
They did a great job. So what was your input into that? What did you do for them? And
I ran the whole business aspect of the practice.
Business?
Yeah, managed everything. All the employees, and then he began to create satellites, as you well know. I mean, and I was then responsible for the personnel in those offices.
So how did that affect Ulster County? What did that do for Ulster County, the family practice residency program?
Well, I think it built Ulster County to the level of where we needed the healthcare industry, because some of it was leaving. And his dream was, of course, to educate at that given point in time. I mean, there's 30 residents now. We started with 8 to 10. And they were in their first, second, and third year of residency. And their time was carved out. They spent a certain amount of time in their first year at the hospital, and then, of course, treating patients with preceptors. Because, like Dr. Woodley, Walter, a good friend of mine, he's been there almost 35 years. He started out as a resident when I was there. So they have incorporated the hospitals with, the residents are very fluent.
Okay, I'll tell you what, that's really, I like to learn more about the family practice residency program and how that's impacted the county. But we're going to take a break first here. Dan's signaling me over there.
Of course.
We're ready, Dan, when you are.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ed Alio, and all of our guests today. It's 8:29 right now, a little bit early. We'll get through our break and get back early. It's Monday, December 27th, and 28 degrees here in Uptown Kingston. And this last portion of Kingston Community Radio was brought to you by Herzog's Home and Paint Center in the Kingston Plaza. Find them there for all of your home building, maintenance, and painting needs, and discover the difference of buying local. And we'll be right back after these messages.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to The Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive, and now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Hi, my name is George Post from Ulster Park, New York, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you. Where else can you speak to your local representatives on the air and have your questions answered? So thank you, and support KCR.
And you're with us here at KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM, and streaming online at mykcr.org. This upcoming portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Many locations throughout the Mid-Hudson Valley, one near you. Today it's going to be cloudy with snow showers developing for the afternoon, a high of 32, 40% chance of snow showers, and a light wintry mix early in the evening tonight. Precipitation will change to mostly light freezing rain overnight, a low of 28. And Tuesday, a mix of clouds and sun early, then becoming cloudy later in the day, a high of 47. And Tuesday night, cloudy with rain, 60% chance of rain showers and snow showers too, depending on where we live. Low of 32, and Wednesday overcast with a high around 40 degrees, and Wednesday night cloudy skies early with a 50% chance of showers later at night with a low around 35. Okay, let's get back to the on-air studio with Dr. Ed Alio and guests.
Okay, we're back. Thank you. Again, Gene Jacobs here, and I have Dr. Yoya. John Yoya, he's decided to stay. We may stick dogs in periodically, but Jean's going to tell us more about what's going on in Kingston and from the hospital, from her history and her background. So, Jean, you were saying about family practice.
Yes. As I said, I was there. I started in 1979 and left in 1995. We incorporated on our own in 1983.
What's that mean, incorporated what?
Well, we were affiliated with Kingston Hospital up until 1983, and then we became our own entity, okay? And therefore, from 1983 on, it was family practice. Now it's a Mid-Hudson Family Health Services Institute, of course. But through time, the amount of residents that they graduated, many of them over the course of time when I was there from 1979, am I okay here? From 1979, many of them have located locally here. But much of that has changed. I mean, the healthcare industry, quite frankly, has changed over the course of time. I mean, years ago, even John, they had their, and yourself included, you created a profile reasonable and customary charges. I mean, that's all changed. And down the road, because of the fact that contracted medical health care and
when you say a reasonable charge, what's that mean?
reasonable your specialty.
To the listeners, what's that mean on charges? Is it to build a profile?
Yes.
So who can pay us? What's that mean to the listeners?
Well, third-party payers. At that time, there wasn't as many contracted providers. Now you have contracted providers where doctors have to enroll and become a participant, okay?
Essentially,
right.
What happened over the last 20, 30 years is medicine has been destroyed. I swore I was not going to get political about this, but hang on, and I'm not going to blame any current presidents. Back to the time of Ronald Reagan, we were given a maximum allowable charge on the Medicare, and immediately the brakes were on any charges. So this idea that you had usual and customary, meaning you could charge $10,000 per procedure, but the government said it was only worth X amount. Now, if you're in New York City, you can ignore all that, and so having a hip replacement in New York City at the Hospital for Special Surgery, you might be charged $30,000 for the procedure. In Kingston, that was about $1,700 total care, okay, just as a comparison. So this idea of usual and customary went out the window in 1980-something, and it's only gotten worse to where charges have been crammed down. And
we all experience that.
Absolutely.
And you see a bill, I'm sure the listeners, when they see they go for a procedure, no matter what it is, it's a $2,200 bill, and Medicare pays $350,
right,
and your co-insurance pays $35, and you go, what happened to the rest of it?
Right.
It's allocated away. And we all experience that, and it started out with remember there's an old thing called DRGs.
Exactly.
Right.
And then you could it's for the listeners again.
Right.
You could bill, and Medicare or the insurance would pay you. And what people did, and which is part of the problem, is they thought they could bill more and more and more. Right. So DRG said, okay, we're going to pay 80% of a charge. And then it was 80% of the 80%, and then 80% of the. So it got because people got to be ruthless about their billing. The physicians did, and the hospitals did, and it ends up now nobody gets paid anything, and that's why nobody likes insurance. When I was orthopedic, I was down in New York City to this hip physician,
an excellent one,
and he's a great physician. And I went in there, and they didn't tell me they didn't take Medicare. He said he'll see me. And so I go down there and I see him and I get a $500 bill.
Wow.
And I said, what happened to him? He doesn't take Medicare anymore, correct, Dr. Elio. And I said, nobody told me that. And I know what's going on usually because I still bill people.
Of course.
Correct. So I said, well, I'm not going to pay that. So I said, so tell Dr. X, he's a good guy. I said, tell him, give me a charge, a couple $100. I'll give him, for the office visit, which was only a short time. And anyhow, the bottom line was, he said he'll get back to me, and then they just wiped off the bill. But the bottom line, because nobody told me.
Well, in New York City, where you have that population and you have a different strata, you can charge but in Ulster County, you can't do that.
Can't do that.
Because people you don't have the population, you don't have that wealth. That's why we don't have a Macy's anymore. Or some of the big stores, they just left the area because we don't have the finances here. So, it's just very interesting. You said 80%.
Sometimes, we're our own worst enemy in the medical profession because, you can have some practitioners talking, and it's always about the money.
Right.
And that's a problem. We all have practices, and in my practice, it costs a minimum of $275 an hour per day to run the office.
Overhead, right.
So it's important. But the relationship we have with patients is our relationship to do no wrong and take care of the patient. That comes first. It's not about the money, but you have to have the money. When you make it about the money, it becomes a problem.
Right.
And then we have a whole it's different than what it used to be.
Two things about that. You mentioned the 80%. Mm-hmm. Just to warn people, there's a thing called fee for giving. So if you're taking care of a Medicare person, it is absolutely illegal to forgive the 20%. Now, many of us do it.
Right,
And the way,
right,
because
John.
the patient's not going to complain if you forgive it, but if you're found out, you will face all sorts of charges, because if you are willing to accept the 80%, then you should have only charged the 80%,
Right.
which would have given you 64%, but then you'd have to charge them that 16%. Well, if you'd accept only the 64%, then you should get 80% of the 64%.
It's a never ending. Well, again, for the listeners, that means that if you're on Medicare and you're a provider who does Medicare, you have to charge anybody who's Medicare eligible the
exact amount.
The least amount that you charge a medically eligible Medicare patient.
Right.
Whatever, that's what Medicare will pay you. So if you charge one Medicare patient nothing for a procedure, then Medicare will pay you nothing going forward, because that's your history.
That's your history.
Let me give you another anecdote. Many years ago, I did not charge Medicaid patients.
Right.
I had a Medicaid number, but I didn't charge because I didn't want to because literally
You didn't want to bill them.
Didn't want to bill them because we were getting like less than 10 cents on the dollar.
Right,
Okay?
exactly.
And so we had a patient, and they wanted cab services or something like that, and I refused to sign. I didn't do the paperwork. I just
No.
didn't want to do. We got called, and one of my secretaries at that time, she was a lovely gal and rather simple. She was. I don't mean simple that she was stupid. She was very simple about how she answered things. And they said, "Well, he's not doing the paperwork. Well, how does he charge?" He doesn't charge you. And the person that doesn't charge, he says, "Yeah, we don't do the. We just give the services away free." There was an older doctor who's retired now, that I'm sure, Jalal Madavian, who at
Right.
the time got a whole bunch of us said, why are you doing the paperwork to justify their existence when their secretaries are making more than you are? Just give the service away as good and welfare. So at the time, we didn't advertise. We had to see Medicaid patients or people without, because if you were on service, it meant you had to take who?
So what happened?
They dropped the call.
So you've seen that in your career, right?
Of course.
And so what happens along that line?
Hold on a second. Wait a second, because we're being a little dishonest here. Because hang on a second, there was a special program
Who's
for
being
the
dishonest?
medical. I'm sorry, for the residency program through Maurice Hinchy,
Right.
where they were funded on Medicaid patients way more than any private physician.
Right,
We were
exactly.
seeing them for free, and they were seeing them for approximately $90.
Family practice.
Family Practice Institute.
Yes.
And that's the absolute truth.
Yes, it
There
is.
was a special program endorsed by Maurice Hinchy, and that's why there was a schism. That's why there was a schism between many of the private practitioners and Mesh's program, because we would see them, we would help them, and we would get zip, and they were being funded like specialists. I'm sorry. So he created a beautiful dynasty, but it was self-ingratiating. Okay.
Oh, that's what happens when you build a program. You want to do the best.
It was products of ambulatory care. John is correct. And we did get a much higher rate of reimbursement because of how we created ourselves. And within the community, that was a problem. I understand that. But
What do you mean? In between the
well, I think it was known, as John just said. It was definitely known because virtually many of the practicing physicians within the community, their level of reimbursement for Medicaid was next to nothing.
Right.
But let's look at another factor here. Reimbursement in a rural area is one of the problems that the hospital has faced, from Kaminsky to Lundquist to Scarpino, and Michael Doyle is there now.
all those people. I mean, it's
Well,
over the ages. It's been the
I'm
same.
just they're the CEOs of John would know, the hospitals over the course of time, and then you have Michael Israel now, who's with Westchester Medical Center. But the whole issue right now is reimbursement in a rural area. The reimbursement still has not increased over the course of time in the city of Kingston or upstate.
Can I explain
Correct.
Can I explain to the listeners?
Right.
all of our reimbursement is based on federal mandates, and it is a zero-sum game. There's X number of dollars. So your hospital execs have gone to all our different senators who have had a deaf ear, okay? Because if they gave any more money to Ulster County, they would be taking it away from somewhere else.
Of course.
And there's no
Like
desire.
Westchester.
Well, Westchester, and for that matter, Dutchess is reimbursed at a much higher rate.
Much higher rate.
Okay, and you're agreeing to this. Okay, a much higher rate. Westchester is reimbursed, Westchester and Dutchess are reimbursed at a near New York City rate, where we're a rural rate much. So your practitioner in Ulster County has to deal with trying to compete, paying their salaries, and people are leaving and going across the river. And in general, the average person does not understand that. They okay, so they have lost nurses, they have lost all sorts of personnel to Dutchess County because they could pay them higher, much higher. So why should
because we're reimbursed a lot less.
Much less. So the hospital is fighting an uphill battle, and so they're building a new structure. But the reality is they've lost the confidence of the people here. They've lost the confidence of the physicians, and they've lost the money.
Well,
So-
how did they lose the confidence of the people since, we don't have some surgeons anymore? We don't have, and everybody's in a group and they're across the room. How does that happen, Gene?
Well, let's face it, since the Berger Commission came back in 2006, we have been going down a journey from then until now. Now with the new $93 million facility at Benedictine, then the $43 million that took place in
What's that mean?
2009.
How does that? What happens?
Well, people lose trust. People don't understand.
Well, we're getting a new facility. Why should they lose trust?
Well, because the you have to follow the journey in terms of the overall.
Listen, if you're used to shopping,
I want to hear what you have to say.
No, because you have the Kingston Hospital now, you had 12 to 15 million that was put in there in 2009, okay?
Why are people leaving the county when we're building a new $75 million structure at Benedictine? Why are they leaving? Tell me why.
They've lost confidence in the healthcare industry locally because
Why?
of what I just explained.
Why?
Because many of the doctors...
Physicians aren't any good?
Oh, no, I
Okay,
never say
we know that. Okay, we know they're good.
Oh, yeah,
So
of
why are they
course.
leaving?
Because of the transformation over the course of time when they were going to close a hospital. Now they aren't going to close a hospital because they are
Is
going
it
to
also
create
the
a
fact
medical
that the
mall.
physicians are taking patients from Kingston across the river
Of
and doing
course.
the surgery there instead of doing it here? So we can't bring physicians in. We have no ear, nose, and throat doctors left. And I tried to get those for years, and we almost had it, but we couldn't compete because they belong to groups and they take them away.
Right.
So why is that?
Well, my oldest daughter has been a nurse in the NICU at 27 years in St. Peter's. Can you imagine the amount of patients that go up there from Kingston? It's just occurring over the course.
Is it a better hospital
yes.
I would say so.
in certain areas?
Yeah. She's been there 27 years and
Medicine dictates, money dictates everything.
Mhm.
And so if you can't afford structures, if you can't afford the services, meaning the people, then people talk about there's no nurses on the floor. Well, they can't pay them.
Right.
They can't pay them. People are not going to work for free. So what happens is that the quality, or whatever, seems to go down no matter how hard people are
So
working.
the fact that Westchester is taking over our facilities and they're a giant hospital, has that improved our services at all, Gene? or
I don't
not?
think so.
Why not?
Because, as I just said, with Westchester, okay, let's look at our mental health and the drug that left, okay, when the COVID came. And quite frankly, it's going to impact and affect the taxpayers locally. Because now, our county executive, we are creating more programs, putting more money into something that should never have left. Or if it left for a period of time, but the certificate of need that had to be obtained before they even began their journey.
Mental health.
I want to talk about services. You're talking about money again. And I know there's a relationship.
Right.
But, so when COVID came, they took away the drug and alcohol program. I get that. And so what happened? And we got give me 30 seconds and I got a caller. What happened? Gene, what happened? They took away mental health. What happened?
Well,
Where'd it go?
It went down to Westchester Medical Center with the understanding that it was going to return. So therefore, look at what's been going.
What do the listeners do to protect Kingston and themselves from Westchester dominating the program and taking our patients away? That's the next question. We have a caller.
Okay.
I have a question. I go to the orthopedic doctor, okay? He has office in Kingston. He also has it in Northern Dutchess. Now, if I go to Northern Dutchess Hospital for, be treated there, does he get paid more if I go to Northern Dutchess than if I go to Kingston?
What do you go there for again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay. The orthopedic doctor I go to, he has an office in Kingston, and he also has an office in Northern Dutchess Hospital. Now, when I go to him, if I go to Northern Dutchess Hospital for my office visit, does he get paid more if I go to that office than if I go to the Kingston office?
Does he get reimbursed more? Let's ask an orthopedic surgeon. I don't know, John.
I'm certain that he bills through Dutchess.
Right.
Okay. The practice is called the Orthopedic Associates of Dutchess County. I won't say anything good or bad about them, but you understand that they are based in Dutchess County. Okay. And the question came out, what can the people of Ulster County do about this? Nothing. Let's take...
What the caller wants to do they get reimbursed more?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. If you saw the office here.
In fact, there was a time when doctors here had a satellite office over there, so they would bill out of Dutchess County. Okay, and then what happened was the government took a look at that and said, no, you're really primary at Ulster, so that's your satellite office. They ask you that every time you get licensed, every time you fill out your... But yes, they bill through Dutchess.
Does that answer your question there, ma'am?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your call.
Yeah. You're welcome. Take care. Bye.
Okay.
Let's take mental health and drugs out of it because that's a separate carve-out, and that's the first thing. The second thing is that Westchester looks at us as just a satellite. We're a feeder to their main system. Okay, and I have to tell you, from what I've seen now that I'm retired, okay, there was a reason why I stopped operating about 7 years ago. Okay, we are looked at as nothing more than a satellite for, and what they figure is that they put their money into Poughkeepsie, northern Westchester. Okay. There's nothing for Westchester to really invest in here. They haven't sent up orthopedic surgeons. They have a wonderful group down there. They haven't sent up anybody. And so the providers of our two, Albany and Westchester, just look at us as feeders that people are going to leave the area. And there's nothing you could do at this point, okay, to change that. Perhaps over the next 30 years, if the new hospital, which really I understand is going to be $146 million investment. Perhaps with some new physicians coming in over time, trust will be rebuilt. Services will be rebuilt. Okay?
Why would the physicians come here if they're not going to be reimbursed?
That's a good question. They may not. They may not.
So we're spending $136 million for what? For looks?
That's a good question.
It'll look nice.
That's a good question.
So I understand what both of you are saying, and I'm very pro having people stay here. I think we should stay here. We should support our hospital, and the patients don't support the hospital for the reasons you just gave, and the physicians are, the people who take patients out of our community, I think, are at fault. They come in, they see patients here, and then they take them over across the river or to Poughkeepsie or wherever for the surgery and for the whatever they do.
It's dollars and cents.
It's all right.
And you can't fault them, because if you do a job and you're told that being here you're going to get 2/3 of what you're going to get from 20 minutes away, you're going to work 20 minutes away. There's no reason.
Gene, so you can't change the profile. If the physicians keep taking them away, the profile is going to stay the same. Ulster County is going to still be a satellite. Gene?
Exactly. But as we're just saying, are the doctors going to come here? And when you build, we just said it's $146 million. I thought it started out at $93 million. And the 43...
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's a lot of dollars.
It's a lot of dollars. So you've got to encourage and promote and motivate the people or the doctors to want to come here, or we're going to be at a loss here. I mean, was there a plan? I'm all about creating an initial needs assessment plan. Okay, that's how I look at things. And so can they justify the dollars coming in to support the cost that's going into this now? I mean, look at
What's the answer? I don't know. The answer is?
Well, look at the ambulatory surgical center.
No.
The answer is no. I mean, in my eyes, of my experience in the field and watching it over the course of the last 20, 30 years, yes. But you created the Foxhall Ambulatory Surgical Center. That was $4.9 million over. Okay, and that's not even used now, John. I mean, I think it's used for some.
Hang on, it is so complicated. The Foxhall Center was created because of this figment of mentality about abortion.
Right.
And they did no abortions there.
No.
It had to be because of the alignment of the Benedictine and the Kingston Hospital.
Right.
They could not have a facility which would do abortions. So they had to create this almost $5 million fiasco. It never got used because there were no abortions being done. But the state said they could not have the amalgam. They could not form this without having abortions.
On what?
The alliance.
They could not form an alliance of the two hospitals unless they still had abortion services, and yet the Catholic edict was we couldn't have abortions.
Right.
So they had to make another. So they wasted $5 million on a.
$5 million is not so much now. It was a lot then.
It's a lot any time.
Yeah, well, the house.
Okay. But just to let the listeners, there's so much here that's clouded in mystery and chicanery, okay, that no one understands. I see all these signs along the roads here, save our mental health.
Right.
It's gone. It's not coming back unless the state decides to put the money directly into the program here. You know, again, it's all about dollars because you can't fund the people who work there unless you have the dollars.
I want to leave the listeners with something positive, knowledgeable, not necessarily positive, and that is that the reason we're losing our services is because the reimbursement, the money that's paid for a procedure is better in Dutchess County than it is here. Mm-hmm. Westchester Medical has taken over our community, and what they've done is to take our hospitals and kind of neuter them a little bit because we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough staff, and that's because the procedures are taken outside, whether it's heart surgery, hip surgery, it goes someplace else and not being done here. Exactly. So all we're doing is we're taking the acute care stuff that happens into the hospital. As a summary, I hope this is right. I think it is. We take them in, and then depending on what their problem is, we either solve it in a couple of days or we send them someplace else.
Exactly.
Correct.
And so that's where the word feeder comes in. It's really sad because we have great physicians, but they're all getting older and they're retiring, and we're all leaving. And the result is that we've lost our edge.
I want you to recall.
But we should get it back somehow.
I only have 38 years here, but Kingston Hospital in particular was a jewel, was a little jewel, and it thrived on three things: orthopedics, urology, and general surgery. We didn't do hearts. We didn't do crazy stuff. We did meat and potatoes type stuff, and they did it well. They had anesthesia who didn't lose people. They did. We had old line doctors. They were very confident.
Right.
They when we went in the OR, we knew we were safe. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the ORs, as perhaps antiquated as they were fabulous. And we've lost that. And I don't know how that comes back because we don't have the support. Perhaps if the listeners get on the backs of our elected individuals and calls, and all I keep doing every week is get something from Antonio Delgado telling me how great things are, and I want to say, sir, I retired because medical care here sucks.
Well,
okay?
So the listeners need to do
Exactly.
something. They need to talk to the state representative. They need to talk to Delgado. They need to talk to Cahill and get him to go. Well, we're done, guys. Let's do it again. How about that?
We never We never
great.
talked about truffles.
We'll do it.
But
We'll
we
do
will.
it.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Hey,
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
See you, John.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Okay, thank you very, very, very much, folks. Thank you, Dr. John Yoya, orthopedist, Gene Jacobs, Kingston Family Practice Institute, and a special thanks to Dr. Ed Alio for hosting today. And you're with us here at KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM. We thank you for sharing the morning with us. Talk radio at its best. Inspired discussions of, by, and for the community. This last portion of Kingston Community Radio was brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Many locations throughout the Mid-Hudson Valley, one near you. And we invite you to be with us tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. for a terrific Tuesday, as we are broadcasting 7 to 9 a.m. every weekday. And until then, we wish you every success in growing and developing Kingston and our neighboring communities. We now return you to Magic 92.5.